Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Yes, my friends. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I've got several things. This is one of those days when I've got a lot of things on the noggin here that I want to talk about, and so we will do our absolute best to get us there. I would like to talk about several things here today. First, I don't know if in order. We'll see how we decide to tackle this today. We have what the New York Times is calling a nightmare scenario for Democrats if the population projections hold as we move toward the 2030 census. We have the Cracker Barrel. We've not talked about Cracker Barrel on here. The Cracker Barrel branding logo debacle that has happened. Trump weighing in on that, and Cracker Barrel basically doing a 180 on it. We've got fights regarding crime and how to handle crime in our nation's cities. Listening to the left say some pretty ridiculous things as it pertains to crime. We've seen people take the stage. The Democrats, by the way, are meeting to kind of do some upper level planning and what are they? It's just a DNC meeting here, and there's one of the speakers who actually. It's unbelievable, truly. Her name is Insha Rahman. She's the VP of the Vera Institute of Justice. She said during, I believe, her speech or during a DNC meeting that migrant crime and carjackings, quote, don't matter to that many Americans. It's just unbelievable to me what's going on out there. These are the things I want to touch on today as we go through this. Also, Trump had said that he wants to see NBC and ABC have their FCC licenses revoked. That's out there as well. All these things are in my head as we start the program today, and those are the things that I want to tackle. We're going to bob and weave probably between these things, and my friends, we will get there in due course. Before I do that, though, friends, let's be honest. When your financial world starts getting a little more complicated, you need more than the standard one-size-fits-all approach. That's where Full Suite Wealth shines. Their team specializes in working with families and individuals at your level. They specialize in helping folks who are beyond just the basics. You've developed created a scenario as you've grown and had success to where you need some help with a wide variety of issues. And that's why Full Suite Wealth is here to help you. They specialize in working with families and individuals who need personalized guidance that goes far beyond the basics. Things like private equity, private credit, option strategies, coordinated legal planning. Full Suite Wealth helps you see the big picture and make confident decisions about your legacy. It's all about having a dedicated team guide you every step so you can focus on what matters most to you. That's your family, your goals, your future. If you want more confidence in your financial life, visit fullsuitewealth.com. That's fullsuitewealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future, my friends. All right, so how are we going to tackle this today? Because there's a lot going on out there. I think the best way to go about tackling this, to to go about tackling this is to kind of start with something that we talk about here on a semi-regular basis, something that is kind of a foundational component here of the Todd Huff show, and that is this this concept, this understanding, if you will, that we are engaged in a battle against what I call the 7 pillars of propaganda. Now, the 7 pillars of propaganda are, we can go through what those are specifically, but effectively what those are some very important components of our society, influential components of our society, so that, they have impact, influence over our culture, over our society, over the people that live here. This would include things like, the media, the bureaucratic state or the government. This would include science. This would include woke business. And so we have a battle on multiple fronts. It's not just that we have to win at the polling booth, which we do. We have to win a larger battle that's being waged in media, that's being waged inside of the bureaucratic state. And this is obvious with much of what we discuss and we talk about on this program. These battles are all over the place. That's why I encourage people to find your place. Find your place. We can't fight all these battles, all these fronts ourselves. So this is a great tool to help us kind of pick the places where these battles need to be fought. And even within the pillars themselves, there might be subgroups within those. But anyway, so we're fighting this battle on multiple fronts. It's not just that you have bad politicians making bad decisions for the American people. You also have bureaucratic actors in the deep state, if you will, in the bureaucratic state, in the swamp, who resist the changes being brought by, say, President Trump. Trump has learned a lot this term, and he's actually taking some much more aggressive action on this. If you're going to oppose him and stop his agenda from being implemented, which he absolutely has the right to do as president of the United States, head of the executive branch, your job is effectively on the line. This is one reason, though surely not the only reason, but one reason why Trump is reducing the size and scope of government, making it more manageable, making it more affordable, getting rid of people who candidly are defying orders. They're not, they're being insubordinate, something that you would be fired for in your job, whatever it is that you do. And so there's a lot of things going on, a lot of fronts that we're fighting battles on here. And so messaging, of course, is one of those. And so I will start by referencing this quote allegedly made by Insha Rahman, VP of the Vera Institute of Justice. When talking about migrant crime, when talking about carjackings, she said that these things don't matter to that many Americans. So this is a strategic meeting from the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. They're meeting strategically, planning. I mean, they have taken it on the chin everywhere that we have looked. And now you have someone who's instructing the members of the Democrat Party to effectively not worry themselves about the safety of American citizens, which is absolutely unbelievable to me. How you can come to that conclusion is mind-boggling for the average American. It's mind-boggling to think that someone would look at the world that way. When she says that not that many Americans care about migrant crime, first of all, let me just tell you something. The average person doesn't care if the crime that is being committed is committed by a migrant, as she put it, a national born. Now, there's a difference, I suppose, at one level because people who are here illegally shouldn't be here in the first place to commit these crimes. That actually is perhaps the second crime in the minds of many people. Why are we letting people into this country who are further harming Americans? So there could be a second way of looking at that as though it's a problem. But crime is crime. If I get mugged on the streets, heaven forbid, I don't care the race, gender, ethnicity of the person. I want justice to be served. I want to feel safe. I want people, more importantly, people in my family, my friends, the rest of Americans to feel safe in our cities as they would go about their business and live their lives. But the Democrats don't appear to care about that. In fact, this leads into what is this brouhaha, this battle coming between cities in this country and President Trump when it comes to securing our nation's streets. As I've talked about for the past several days, I believe that we have come, as collectively as Americans, we've become maybe a little bit numb to all of the violence. We've accepted it as the status quo. And so not only are the cities like Washington, D.C., it's fourth in overall homicides in the nation based upon the crime rates, the homicide rate actually, specifically. It's fourth in the country, but not only is it fourth and high amongst its peers, I believe that the crime rate overall is high to begin with. So it's the highest of what has already become an unacceptably high status quo standard for us to live with here in this great nation. There's no reason we should be having crime at the rates that we have it. Now, Trump says, now this is interesting to me. I'm in the last two chapters of the book of Leviticus. I read, this is in the stack of stuff today too, by the way, Trump is going to be seeking the death penalty for people who commit murder in the District of Columbia. That's what Trump says should happen. By the way, I am on board with that. I am amazed by the number of people. I remember this in college. I remember debating the death penalty at American University. And it's remarkable that this is when you'll hear people chime in with a verse from the Bible. They'll reference the 10 Commandments, Exodus chapter 20. They'll reference, thou shalt not kill, is what they'll say. So why are we doing this? And what's interesting to me is, number one, I'll actually skip the order I was going to say this, but I remember saying this to my classmates. You know, you're looking at the 10 Commandments, and I mean, that's great that you're doing that. I applaud you for that. I'm interested, though, in making sure that we're not just reading it to make a point. Are we reading it to understand and to accept what the word is actually trying to tell us? Are you just trying to make a political point because you think it's saying that nobody should ever be put to death by capital punishment? Because that's not what it's saying. In fact, I remember Exodus chapter 20 was on the left side. As I would open my Bible, now I do most things digitally, though I sometimes wonder if I should go back to the print version. It's just so convenient. I can listen to my Bible studies on walks and that sort of thing. But, when you're looking at the left side, that's where Exodus 20 was, you literally just turned your head. I didn't have to flip a page. And Exodus 21 began to give examples. If you start reading there, you'll find you don't have to go very far into that chapter and the chapters that follow where there are instances where God says if a person commits this crime, they are basically to be put to death. That's what it says. And so clearly in Exodus 20, when it says thou shalt not kill, it's not just saying all forms of killing. In fact, if you want to get a more accurate rendering of what the word kill should be, it should be murder. It should be murder. There's the concept of murder is an unjustifiable killing or taking of a human life. Murder is different than a self-defense taking of a human life or capital punishment. And so Trump's out here saying, look, there is a way to enforce the law and make this, to clean this up. Now, you'll hear the people on the left say you can't incarcerate your way out of this, right? You can't just go all stick and no carrot or no, we can't just build prisons and throw people in prison and all of this. And I say, part of me says I agree with that because there are some underlying problems and circumstances that have led to this, things that are cultural, things that have become acceptable. I listen to a lot of different things. I consume a lot of information in a given day. And I listen to a gentleman from time to time. Kent Hovind is his name. He's an individual who's used to go, I don't know if he still goes to speak at churches, but he spoke at churches. He's got a museum, I think. He did have one, and he would speak about science and evolution. And he's made a pretty impressive, what I think is a pretty profound point that most of us would agree with when talking about how people in this current age, this time that we live in, we look down upon, or I guess people have devalued human life. And he said it's undeniable that at least part of that, maybe a lot of that, comes from the modern interpretation or I guess acceptance of the theory of Darwinian evolution. Because, like it or not, I know there's some people out there and some who may be listening to my voice who believe that evolution was the tool that God used to create humanity. The problem is that doesn't stack up to the biblical account, no matter how you would technically read the Genesis story. But secondly, we know that death came to planet Earth after the fall of man, after sin. There was no death prior to sin entering the world according to the Bible. And so there were millions of years of evolution before we got to man. Those species would not have died, at least according to what the Bible tells us. And so, but the bottom line is evolution, Darwinian evolution, was designed not to come up with an explanation as to how God created the universe. Rather, the evolutionists created that as a theory to avoid having to accept that there was a creator. Now, if there is no creator, suddenly questions like, why am I here? And some of those meaningful questions that we ask, what's the purpose of my life? Those sorts of things in Darwinian evolution, in the absence of God, coupled with that, there's no explanation for anything. In fact, some of these philosophers, the nihilists, for example, they admit it, they acknowledge it. There's no purpose at all. In fact, some of the most extreme ones, and you can cover young ears here if you would like to do so, if the kids are listening. But if they are, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to say it now. Some of them say that there's no reason not to commit suicide, which, listen, obviously as a human being, as a person who believes in the Bible, there's absolutely no, don't do that. But from the philosophy that says that there is no meaning, there is no right and wrong in this world, unfortunately, they're right. This ideology, this belief, secular humanism and all this, gives birth to extreme despair and hopelessness and meaninglessness. So we have this out there. There's a lot of other problems as well that we see culturally. We see high numbers of households that have single mothers raising their children. Some of these mothers do absolutely astonishing work. I don't know how they do it, but children not having a father are losing something that was in the design of the family, something that's necessary. Some fathers are present. They're present physically, but they're not present emotionally. They've been convinced that what being a man is something that is not at all manly in the slightest. And so you have men that aren't really, healthy manhood, leading their families, raising their children. You have some that are completely absent. There's a lot of problems, right? Moral relativism. We've devalued life with secular humanism and Darwinian evolution and so forth. All these things pile up to say that there's a mess. There's a lot of problems that lead to high rates of violence in our nation's cities. Of course, you could add in some of the instances the racial components that people talk about as far as anger, or not always racially motivated. Sometimes it's based upon classes. People who feel like they've been slighted by society because of whatever. So they're in a lower economic or income, socioeconomic standard or bracket or whatever. I don't like to look at this direction. I think that we're all human beings, regardless of race, gender, all that stuff, socioeconomic status. But there's lots of factors. But the bottom line is that if things are illegal to, violent crime is illegal, the state has an obligation to stop it, even if it means incarcerating your way out of it, even if it means holding people to account, even if it means having capital punishment. Not for, obviously, all sorts of crimes, but for the most heinous crimes, for murder, certainly. Maybe for rape. Listen, there could be things that could be done. Now, so there's a battle between the mayor of Chicago, Donald Trump, National Guard. Bottom line is the left's on the side of saying this is acceptable. These levels of violence are acceptable in our cities, and we don't want Trump's help because we hate Trump. That's basically what this comes down to. So, more to say about this as we're talking about these issues of the day, specifically here about Trump sending in National Guard troops to fix the crime problem in our nation's cities. D.C. so far has had a spectacular result. Maybe there's something that folks could learn from that. Friends, really quickly, I want to remind you that we have started a division here, or restarted a division of something that we had in the past here at the Todd Huff Show, which is called Red, White, and Brand. I had sold a company previously 6 years ago. The non-compete expired, and so we decided to offer these products and services again. This is giving you the ability to put your logo on almost, and I say almost, and I mean virtually anything. Anything from hats and apparel, merchandise, promotional products, trade show banners, backdrops, you name it. Red, White, and Brand is where you can go. redwhiteandbrand.com is the website. Promo code Todd will save you 10%. And if you order online, you'll get free shipping as well. redwhiteandbrand.com, promo code Todd. Quick time out, my friends. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has some interesting thoughts on dealing with violent criminals. He, of course, is a radically insane leftist Democrat that has been given the responsibility of leading as mayor the city of Chicago, and as most other Democrat mayors have been there in recent memory, actually going back a long time. You talk about a corrupt city and a corrupt place. Chicago, maybe at the top of the list. Corruption runs really deep there. And as I'm looking at this video clip, I've got it paused here as I'm going to cue this soundbite up. Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is trying his best to become the Democrats' version of Trump. He's trying to play the tough guy role. I used to call Chris Cuomo tough guy Chris Cuomo. I may have to move that nickname to J.B. Pritzker, tough guy J.B. Pritzker. He's, of course, a billionaire, which is ironic to me. The left decries billionaires, thinking there should be no billionaires. I guess no billionaires except for J.B. Pritzker. I guess no billionaires except for George Soros. I guess no billionaires unless they are pursuing and funding the radical left's agenda. But nonetheless, I don't hold any ill will over regarding J.B. Pritzker because of his wealth. I just think that he's dangerous politically. I think his ideas, like the others on the radical left, are absolutely deplorable and dangerous and need to be stopped. Likewise, the ideas of Mayor Brandon Johnson need to be stopped in the city of Chicago as well. With that being said, I just want you to listen, right? So we've talked about Trump sent the National Guard into Washington, D.C. I don't have a current count, but as of the last check, there had not been a homicide in D.C. in 12 days. I think I talked about that on Monday, perhaps yesterday. There's drop in other violent crimes in the city of D.C. as well since Trump has taken these measures. People report feeling safer. People are thanking Trump in Washington, D.C., who, by the way, votes for Democrats 90+% of the time. I mean 90+% of the residents vote for Democrats. They're out there thanking Trump for doing this and wondering in some circles why this was never done before, because it is completely legal and constitutional. Now, Trump has hinted at doing the same things in other places. He's already talked about sending National Guards troops to 19 states to help with to do a support role for ICE. Indiana's on that list. It's mostly Republican governors because of the cooperation there. But I did see the state of New Mexico was on there, which perplexed me. I don't know if these have gotten final approval from governors or what have you. But so there's all this stuff happening, right? And you look at crime. You look at crime in the city of Chicago, and it is disastrous. It is undeniable, no matter how they try to frame it, no matter how they try to explain it, no matter how they try to account for it. It is a dangerous city. Now, Chicago is a big place. Some people think, well, they'll take their cell phone cameras out. I've seen people do this in Washington, D.C., and they'll show people in military fatigues, or they'll show a Humvee parked somewhere on the National Mall and say, why are these people here? And they'll show themselves walking. Does it look dangerous? Well, no, it doesn't look dangerous when you're walking there in the broad daylight. No, it doesn't look dangerous if you're not capturing one of the murders that have happened in your city, in our nation's capital. I mean, it's like, you talk about that. That is the perfect definition of anecdotal evidence. I mean, this is ridiculous to think that this is how some people think. Murder rates are what they are. And even the murder rate that the White House says in Washington, D.C. has been messed with, has been, people are being classified. Some murders, Stephen Miller, we played this clip yesterday. Stephen Miller said some murders in Washington, D.C. are actually have been counted as accidents. He says once we get the full picture of what's really gone on there, it's going to be obvious that they've been cooking the books, trying to make it look like crime is going down in our nation's capital. As I explained yesterday, obviously there's a reason for this. The left is notoriously weak on crime. The left typically sides with people who are the criminals. The left wants to do things, or has wanted to do things historically, like defund the police. We talked about that yesterday. And now they scratch their head and they think, wow, I wonder why the crime rate's so high. It's because of the policies and the things that you say and the excuses you give and the hopelessness that your ideology is built upon. The things that we're teaching our children in schools, the things that are happening culturally. I talked about this a little bit last segment. And so now the chickens are coming home to roost here. They've created this disaster. It's undeniable. They can try to explain it any number of ways. It's not just D.C., it's also the city of Chicago. And so they're trying to push back on Trump's threats or Trump's thoughts on possibly sitting in the National Guard to deal with the violent crime problem in Chicago. So they have these press conferences. They bring all the political bigwigs out here. J.B. Pritzker, I said, standing in the background. And here's Mayor Brandon Johnson taking to the podium to share these thoughts on crime in the city of Chicago. Listen to this nonsense.
The mayor of this city, I can tell you that Chicagoans are not calling for a military occupation. They are calling for the same thing that we've been calling for some time, and that's investment. What safe cities across America all have in common, they invest in people. And that's what we're doing in Chicago. We need the federal resources to make sure that we're building more affordable housing, expanding mental and behavioral health care, education, all of these things that could reduce crime and provide real community safety. Instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars for a publicity stunt to invoke chaos and terror, the federal government should spend that money on proven solutions to crime and violence reduction.
What's amazing is he's saying this in the wake of what's happening in real time in our nation's capital. They need an investment. They need your tax dollars to fix this problem. They need your tax dollars. They don't need the government, the federal government's ability to help them clean up the streets of Chicago. No. They just want the money, and then they'll determine what they do with it. Listen, you know my thoughts on the federal government giving money back to the states. This is completely upside down and backwards, but this is what the lovers of big government have created. We once upon a time had a nation where states collected tax revenue. It's complicated, but states would basically be responsible for whatever percentage of the overall population their state represented. That's how much of the federal budget that state was effectively responsible for. They'd cut the check, send it to Washington, D.C. That has been flipped on its head. We've had constitutional amendments. We've had the creation of the IRS. We had the creation of the federal income tax. Now Washington taxes you directly, me directly. You send a tax check, or you have it withheld from your paycheck to Washington, D.C. Then they say, all right, now we got all the money. Now we can tell these states how to behave, what to do. And so if you do certain things, we'll give you money. If you are woke enough when a leftist is in the White House, running Congress and so forth, you'll get more money. More money for the crazier stuff. Now that Trump's there, Trump says, to heck with all this. You guys have been doing this nonsense, these shenanigans for decades now. The problem's not gotten better. It's gotten much worse. I've cleaned up D.C. Why don't you want us to do the same for the city of Chicago? And the left, I'm telling you, no matter how you frame this, the left is defending the crime rate in the city of Chicago. This has become acceptable. This has become the status quo. This has become the baseline. This is the level of violence that the Democrats are comfortable with. Talking about building affordable housing, talking about taking investment into their city. I'm not saying that these can't do good things or that there's not a place for this, but to pretend like that's the solution to violent crime is absolutely ridiculous and insane. I'm only about halfway through his soundbite, but I'm up against a break here in a moment, so I'm going to play this on the other side of the break, my friends. Mayor Brandon Johnson talking about what he thinks should be done. Anything should be done, I guess, besides sending in National Guard troops. They try to make it sound like it's Fallujah, it's somewhere in the Middle East by sending in the National Guard. That's not the case at all. There's been great results for the people of Washington, D.C. Chicago could have this as well. We'll see what happens here. Friends, you know that as you age, taking care of your health becomes something that's more in the forefront of your mind. When you're younger, you feel invincible and that nothing's ever going to get you. Let me say this, though. If you're younger, this product is still for you. Taking care of your heart is incredibly important, especially if you have a family history of heart problems, high cholesterol. Solti is here to help you. I take the product. You can take it as well. It's been scientifically proven to lower cholesterol. It may be able to do the same for you. Solti.com, SOLTEA. Promo code Todd will save you 50% and get you free shipping to boot. Solti.com, SOLTEA. Promo code Todd. I've got to take a break, my friends. Quick timeout. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Think about this for just a moment. Our investments are like seeds that we plant. They grow, they multiply, but are they bearing the kind of fruit that we want? At 48 Financial, they believe our money should reflect our values. That's why they specialize in wealth management and biblically responsible investing. They screen out companies that do not align with your faith. It's all part of what they call their purpose-centered financial planning, helping you live a life of meaning and purpose. Now, You want to see if your investments align with your values. There's a simple tool that you can do, that you can use. All you have to do is go to 48financial.com/Todd. You got to put that /Todd in there to get to the right page. 48financial.com/Todd, and you'll end up on a page where you can take an assessment to see if your current investments, or to what degree your current investments, align with your values. 48 Financial, they're here to worry about your money so that you do not have to. All right, I told you I was going to play the rest of this clip, the rest of the soundbite from Mayor Brandon Johnson, City of Chicago's mayor. I want you to listen to the rest of this. This is insane how flippantly he talks about violent criminals, the violent crime, the way he looks at this. This is the problem. One of the problems that we have are the way that these leftist lunatics frame and talk about and look at solving this problem of violent crime in America. Here you go.
We cannot incarcerate our way out of violence. We've already tried that. And we've ended up with the largest prison population in the world without solving the problems of crime and violence. The addiction on jails and incarceration in this country, we have moved past that. It is racist, it is immoral, it is unholy, and it is not the way to drive violence down.
Unholy.
We cannot return to the same failed strategies that got us here in the first place.
You got yourself
under the previous presidential administration.
Spit it out.
We requested more federal resources to address gun violence in our city. We continue to make that same call. We have made significant progress on our own, but there is so much more that we can do if we had real support from the federal government.
You got to be kidding me. Blaming the federal government. Listen, there's lots of things to blame the federal government for, but the crime rate in your city, Brandon Johnson, is not the fault of the federal government. That falls squarely on the lunatics who've been running that city for decades now. We've tried. It's racist, it's immoral, it's unholy. Friends, I look at stopping violent crime exactly the same way I looked at stopping what happened along the southern border. By the way, Trump did exactly what needed to be done to stop the influx of illegal aliens coming across the southern border. I talked about this for years, for years on this program. I had the analogy when you're on the boat, right? You get a little leak on your boat starts taking on water. What is the very first thing that you do? The very first thing that you do, I mean, assuming you've got your life jacket on and all that, the first thing you do is you seek to plug the hole. You think, let's stop the problem from getting worse. That is critically important. I got to quit taking on more water. More water means I'm going to have a bigger problem on my hands much more quickly. Let's stop the problem, and then once we stop taking on water, let's then look at bailing the water that's on here. It defeats the purpose to try to start bailing water when you're still taking on water. So just as the first thing that had to be done regarding illegal immigration was to stop the flow of people coming across the border illegally, likewise, the first thing is for those right now who are committing violent crimes, we can't have some pie-in-the-sky sort of dream that if we say nice things to them and give them jobs and affordable housing, that one day they'll stop being violent. No, the first thing you have to do is you have to get these people off the streets simply by enforcing the law. What is the point of having laws, Mr. Johnson, if you're not going to enforce them, if you're going to call them racist? How in the world is it racist to say that you want to send people who commit murder to prison or to potentially use capital punishment as a deterrent and as a measure for that? I mean, telling me this stuff is unholy. What in the world are you talking about? The same book, by the way, the word holy means to be set apart. Unholy, I don't even think he knows what he's talking about here. It's unholy to want to reduce crime. It's unholy to want to hold people accountable. You know that the entire Bible, Mr. Johnson, I hope you know, is that God is a God of justice too. He's a God of grace. He's a God of mercy. But if we refuse to let Jesus pay for our sins, we're going to have to pay for them ourselves. The justice requires that a payment be made. Justice demands that we do something with people who've committed violent crimes, not make excuses for them. What on earth is this guy talking about? How is this racist? How is this immoral? What is immoral is sitting by and watching this happen. You've got to enforce the law. Certainly there are things we can do to try to prevent it in the future, but it's ridiculous to think you're going to simply do other sort of social programs that's going to stop violent crime today. They're not going to read a press release and realize I'm not going to murder someone today because we got more federal funding in Chicago. I got to go. SDG.